Howdy, y'all. Now, I hear it time and time again that philosophy sucks and is useless, and it's just nothing but mental masturbation. And I'd like to challenge that idea with some facts about philosophy. Namely, I would like to start with one of I think, the most important things that philosophy does for us and why it's useful. Number one, it forces us to think about life and all of our assumptions about it. Know yourself. Socrates forced us to analyze our assumptions about our lives, our experience, and how we define important ideas, such as love, wisdom, justice. We learn the importance of being rational, but also being better humans as a result of these simple yet very powerful questions that he asked. This is what we know now as the Socratic method. It's so powerful, in fact, that the Athenians considered his method, the Socratic method, was corrupting the youth of Athens and forced him to choose either between being banished or essentially killing himself, drinking a substance called hemlock, which is poison and would kill yourself, of which he chose the latter. At any rate, making such a choice was a very strong statement as to how important Socrates deemed his work. One cannot help but be in awe of such fortitude. And yes, number two of why philosophy is important: science. Yes, science. Now, the question of science wasn't even a thing in the ancients. And what the ancients did in Greece was they started asking this question: what is stuff? And science arose from such indignation alongside a healthy dose of curiosity. The closer humanity unified their ideas through trade networking, the more they could swap each other's knowledge, wisdom, and also review each other's work as well as challenge assumptions about these things. One significant trade circle during ancient times was, of course, Greece. Thales of Miletus? I don't know how to pronounce this. 624 BC to 546 BC, fun fact, he lived during the time of Aesop, the fables guy. Anyway, he explored the patterns of nature and was one of the first to openly challenge the idea of divine intervention in reality. One famous example of this is where he makes the observation that the Nile River in Egypt wasn't flooding because of their god Happy, don't know if I'm pronouncing that right either, directed it, and speculated on natural causes being the answer, which was very revolutionary at this time. His work was furthered by Eratosthenes, probably butchering again, who found the flooding to be a result of weather patterns. Interesting. So the answer to questions of metaphysics like what is stuff is definitely one for all ages of human existence. Who doesn't ponder such things? I've wondered what the essence of water was since I was able to realize water was even a thing that exists beyond me as a thing. Now, stay tuned for the epic battle of the pre-Socratics. The main event here is, what is the main element that makes stuff up? Here in the ring, we have Anaximenes! It's air! Oh my god, it's air! Yeah, I'm not a good ventriloquist. And here we have Heraclitus. No, it's fire! Yeah! Thales. It's water, you guys! Yeah! No, y'all, says Anaximander. It's all boundless! I don't think there's any clear winners in this one, at least looking back, but I'm pretty sure they each thought that they were the winners. Along comes Leucippus? Along comes Leucippus, who promises that stuff is made from particles that cannot be split. Democritus, a student of Leucippus, systemizes the work of his teacher. Democritus is also known as the father of materialism because of all of his work. Atoms, y'all. Of course, we now know we can split those, but shh. And then there are the math cults. Or at least one that I know of, Pythagoras. You're gonna tell me his theorem is wordless? Good luck with that. Next, I want to talk about the development of the scientific method, which is, it's a long history. It begins, I want to say it begins with Aristotle, and it progresses over time. Aristotle, who was during the time of 384 to 322 before Common Era, radically changed how we view knowledge, prioritizing it as a utility that can be used for classification, and revised how we determine reasonable claims. And he pushed the boundaries of logical consideration. Very important. Now, while he did not create the concept of the scientific method as we now know it, he did begin the fundamental process of classification and seeking natural explanations for phenomena. Honestly, we have to thank Islam for much of the groundwork done in terms of developing a method of science that is reliable. Between the 10th and 14th centuries, the golden age of Islam, scholars sought a way to know the natural world. Ibn al-Haytham, being one of the most renowned mathematicians and physicists, developed a set of principles to follow in order to gain reliable knowledge about how stuff functions. This was one of the very first forms of the scientific method. 1. Observe the natural world. 2. Stating and defining the problem. 3. Formulating a robust hypothesis. 4. Test the hypothesis through experimentation. 5. Assess and analyze the results. 6. Interpret the data and draw conclusions. 7. Publish the findings. Now, he writes in his work, The Book of Optics, quote, "The duty of the man who investigates the writings of scientists, if learning the truth is his goal, is to make himself an enemy of all that he reads and attack it from every side. He should also suspect himself as he performs his critical examination of it, so that he may avoid falling into either prejudice or leniency." Sounds like he's trying to find a way to combat that confirmation bias to me. His discovery on how light functions, going in straight lines until bent by water or some other medium, and color being an interpretation of the eye because the way light is absorbed by objects, was a very revolutionary one, and still remains a scientific fact today. Because, see, at that time, they had these ideas of light comes from the eyes or something, I don't know. A very interesting and important side note here is, if not for the Muslims, who preserved our ancient Greek philosophical text, Western civilization, as we know it, would not exist. Moving forward in the scientific method development, David Hume, another philosopher, revolutionized the idea of empiricism, and his work inspired the way that Charles Darwin considered the natural world, leading to his theory of evolution. Now, there's way more I could add here, but I want to keep this a short video, and I know that if not for the pre-Socratics, Aristotle, Hume, and many of the other great philosophical minds, science would not exist. The third reason why I think philosophy is important and doesn't suck is because it paves the way toward, and sometimes away from, progress. I mean, it kind of teeters. And if you think that politics has nothing to do with philosophy, think again. John Locke's 2 treatises of government outlined the idea of liberty to everyone, something that had not been granted to citizens of nations, as the ideas up to this point was that the only God-given liberty was granted to the monarch or the ruling class or the divine chosen or the pope or whatever. He says, men being, as has been said, by nature, all free, equal and independent, no one can be put out of his estate and subjected to the political power of another without his own consent. This paved the way toward the revolutionary events propagated by those enlightened minds in Europe and abroad, Inspired by such words, longing for that liberty, the United States Constitution was based on Locke's ideas. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Sound familiar? Yeah, it should. Now, on to Marx and Engels. For all their faults regarding communism's dreadful enactments, which it was dreadful. If you deny that, that's another conversation. But one thing I do want to highlight that was a positive from Marx and Engels was that it did impact the world of workers in a very positive way. The movements they inspired of workers of the world unite led to so many regulations put in place. Child labor, at least in the first world, has been largely eradicated. Working conditions have dramatically improved since the time of Marx, and if not for the philosophy that inspired the working class to unionize and fight for their rights, we would still have dreadful pay and working conditions that were sometimes pretty lethal. Now, moving on to one of my favorites, John Stuart Mill, who founded the idea of liberalism, was a key inspiration on how most first world countries operate today. Freedom of speech was something he deemed very important, and for good reason, since at his time and beforehand to speak against the governing powers, something that could get you arrested or killed for treason. He also was one of the first to champion the idea of equality between the sexes. He states, "No one can safely pronounce that if women's nature were left to choose its direction as freely as men's, and if no artificial bent were attempted to be given to it, except that required by the conditions of human society and given to both sexes alike, there would be any material difference, or perhaps any difference at all, in the character and capacities that would unfold themselves." Very good stuff, very important, very glad these philosophers existed. That way we can appreciate the world that we live in today. It's not perfect, we still have a lot to do, and philosophers are still continuing that work. So, yeah. Moving on to number 4, as reasons why philosophy doesn't suck. It's important to be educated on how the world functions. While you may not be able to control everything, you can, as a citizen, have at least some power and knowledge. Something of primary importance is knowing the difference between what we can do and what we can't. I'm going to refer you to my Stoic dichotomy of control video. It might be down there, it might be up there, I don't know. I don't know if I can put it in cards or not, but I'm going to try. So what can we do? We can be responsible with our time, resources, and knowledge. It is important to strive toward open society where our liberties are granted. Be very keen on justice, current events, and how best to be a good citizen in your world. Learn stuff about the veil of ignorance. Learn not to worry so much about frivolous drama, because your time is precious, and your life matters, and your voice does too. Speaking of time, the 5th reason that I'm offering here as to why philosophy does not suck, it enriches our time and experience as human beings in the world. Time. How we waste our most precious commodity. If you've ever had a bad day, witnessed injustice in the world, or have been subjected to injustice, then being familiar with how people of the past have dealt with the human experience of suffering is important. It's a mental journey through past and present that no other path can lead. If not for the study of philosophy, our lives would not be as advanced, comfortable, and liberated as they are today. Philosophy has and continues to have direct impact on our lives. From the philosophy of medicine, the philosophy of science, political philosophy, or even applied ethics of institutions. Shit, those are important. We depend on philosophy for our world to operate the way it does. Now, this is not a complete list of what philosophy can offer, and I certainly haven't gone over all the little details of all the wonderful people, all the wonderful philosophers who have impacted our world in so many ways. It would take me forever to do. But I do want to say that if you watch this video and you seeing all the links that I've put in the description, and you still deny that philosophy has good use for the world, then I don't know what to tell you. You're wrong. And that's okay to be wrong, I guess, but don't knock things if you don't understand. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and end this. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And also, if you can think of any other ways that philosophy has contributed to the advancement of human knowledge and general well-being, let me know in the comments. Really like to hear it. I love discussing this stuff. And I also have a Patreon. So if you want to support me there, that would be great. I'm not monetized yet. I'm trying to grow my channel, but yeah. It really, really helps me out a lot. I also have a Teespring store with merch. Buy my merch. Yay! Also, yeah, remember to know yourself and stay snarky. Bye, y'all. A student of this episode, Lucippus. 3. Formulating a robust. 3. Formulating a robust. John Locke's 2 treatises of John Locke's.
Special thank you to all my lovely patrons. I so appreciate your support. Also, make sure you like, share, and subscribe and hit the bell icon so you can get notifications.